So in this video we're going to look at pruning and maintenance of tomatoes. We know from our notes that there's two different types of tomatoes. You have determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. So the determinate are also called bush varieties, which actually grow in a bush, and what they'll do is they'll give you like a flush of fruit all at once, and then they might give you a second crop later on in the season, and you don't need to prune out the side shoots. The other type of tomato is the indeterminate or cordon tomato, which means it will keep growing and it grows up, it needs to be staked. And this type of tomato does need to be pruned regularly. So I pretty much grow all indeterminate type tomatoes, and we have them here. So I just want to briefly go through the way that I prune the tomatoes throughout the season. So if what we have here then are basically with the tomato plant, you have the main stem coming up here. So this is the main stem with your apical or your terminal bud at the top. So this is where the new buds come all the way up, and the plant will continue to grow all the way up this during the season, right? And then you have your side branch here, which is just the main foliage, right? And in between the main shoot and this side branch, you have what goes, this is where the little side shoots grow, and these guys need to be pruned out, because what they'll do is they'll pretty much grow into like another branch, and you'll have too much foliage on the plant, which will compromise the amount of fruit that you will get. And in addition, if the plant is full of lots of foliage, it can also like bring in aphids into the tunnel, because there's just too much foliage in there, and it can also it'll decrease the ventilation around the plant. And it's just for various reasons you do need to prune out these side shoots. So if you can see it here, so what you do then is once this little guy grows, you just nip that out like that. Okay, and if we come up along the stem here, we can see there is a fruit truss, so the fruit are developing, and there's a big side shoot that I haven't pruned out yet. So again, this guy needs to come out. So you can just snap it, or you can use a secateurs and prune it out if you forget one, and then suddenly you have this big thick side shoot coming out. So you can see there's the terminal bud. Now we can see here, this is the first fruit truss of this plant here. So as the plant grows, there'll be a second, third, fourth, fifth fruit truss the whole way up as the season progresses, right? So as we come back down here to look at the first fruit truss again, so these guys are still developing. Now once the fruit has developed and is the right size for that it should be, and it's starting to ripen, you can then remove all the foliage below the fruit truss. Okay, so it's just, you don't need this foliage anymore, because the plant is growing up here, and these leaves will feed the rest of the plant as they grow. So it's just maintenance of the plant, and what it does then is it lets in a little bit of air around the plants, and it also lets light in. So you can prune out the lower foliage, but you don't do it until the fruit has developed. So I won't do this for like another month or so until these guys are developed into fruit. So that's just another thing to remember. So then as this plant grows and it comes up here to the very top, so once come the end of August or September, the plant will have come up this high, and once it gets to here, then I nip out the terminal bud, which will be the top bud, and that just stops the growth of the plant. And normally what you're looking for then is with an indeterminate type tomato, you'd be looking at the plant giving you about 8 fruit trusses in the season. So if you get that amount of fruit off the plant, you're doing well. But again, you know, tomatoes are heavy feeders, so they do need a fertile ground. And in the previous video when I was showing the bed preparation, you saw that I put in quite a bit of fertility underneath, and then I built over the bed. And in addition here, you can also see that I dressed the bed with mushroom compost. Now this will also act as a weed control, but it has fertility in it, so over the season it will break down, and it will also add fertility to the bed. I also use drip irrigation system, which works really well because the water goes directly into the root system, and then I will turn that on at the moment it's probably every 2 days, but then depending on how the season progresses and the weather, I would adjust the irrigation accordingly. But if you're unsure, you should always just check down at the lower part of the plant, and you can see here it's still quite moist, and the soil is moist. If you look at the colour there, towards the colour there, so there's a lot of moisture there, so that plant isn't stressed. But if you're unsure about how much water to give,
pull down a little tiny bit. And if it's dry an inch down, then it's almost certainly dry below in the root system. So you'll always know by the plant too. These guys were coming on, they look quite healthy, but it's just something to keep a check of your tomato plants and your watering regime. And another thing about tomatoes is they like a regular watering pattern. So decide that if you're going to water them, if it's either every day or every 2 days, that you keep to that watering regime and you give them adequate water throughout the season. So that's just a few tips on maintenance of tomato plants.